Hi. Sunday's Father's Day, and so I thought instead of photos, I would do what I did for my mom, and that is tell some stories. And I can tell tons of stories about my dad. One really nice story is my father was a factory worker, and so on the weekends he dressed in suits and ties, and he would go to the Ikiak, which I know that many of you who lived in Northeast Philadelphia in Tacony know the Ikiak really well. It's the Italian American Independent Club. And he would, on Friday nights, Saturday afternoons, Sunday afternoons, he would hang out with the guys, watch sports, play cards, sit at the bar, whatever. So he would come home and in the late afternoon, and my mom and I would get all dressed up, and we would go to this Italian restaurant called Michelo's. And we would go basically the same restaurant every Saturday, but it was really nice. And I would have my Shirley Temple, and my father a lot of times would have surf and turf, things you couldn't get at home, basically, not pasta. And that was nice. And one of the big things, one of the big, really nice memories with my dad was the day before Mother's Day. He would come home from the club. We called the Ikiak the club. He would come home from the club and he would say, "Okay, Deb, let's go. We gotta, shop for your mom and your grandma. Tomorrow's Mother's Day." And it was always like late in the day. The store was like closing in 20 minutes. And we would go to the same dress shop, which was called Jeans, on Torresdale Avenue, and it was really nice. It was the nicest dress shop in the area. And when I would walk in, they knew us. And I was allowed to run freely and choose whatever I wanted, but one gift for each. One for my mom, one for my grandma. And and so I remember I would sometimes buy bracelets and dresses and a blouse and hats, and over the years, all different things. But I remember I would just, my father would just get the biggest kick out of it. And I would always, I'd pick out something and I would say, okay, now this is what I want. This is for mommy, this is for grandma. And he'd say, "Are you sure? You're positive now? You can't take it back. We can't exchange it." No, I'm positive. And then Jean would look at the price and she'd say, "Oh, Vince, this is expensive." And I'd be like, "My daughter has great taste." And it was like hilarious, But again, I wasn't given a price limit, but I had one each. That was it. But it was a fun shopping experience with my father. Another funny story is my father obviously played the numbers. My father actually was a number writer, a number runner, depending on where you're from, a bookie. And these are the old-fashioned numbers, the street numbers, not the lottery. There was no lottery back then, because, the street numbers were illegal because the government didn't pay, you didn't pay any taxes. That's the reason they were illegal. But at any rate, I remember one Saturday, my mother and I were at my neighbor Angie's, and he said, and he comes in, he goes, "I won today. I hit the number. I won big. Let's go, Deb. We're going shopping." And we went to Frankfurt Avenue, the bigger avenue, and we went to the toy store. And I remember the toy store, again, was going to be closing in like 20 minutes. He came in from the club. And he says, and he goes, "Okay." No, we walk in and the guy says, "I'm sorry, sir, we're going to be closing in about 15 minutes. And he goes, "That's okay. Go ahead, Deb, buy whatever you want." And the guy was like, "Well, it's no rush." I remember I ran through the store and I was just buying games and toys. And I remember him saying, "Don't forget to buy things for your brother." My brother was like 2. But I bought him a little rocking chair, all this stuff. And I remember I bought these great big swans for the pool. Our pool was like maybe 3 feet high. It was those little backyard pools, and the swan would take up the whole pool. But we bought them anyway and stuffed them in the car. It was just the most fun time and a great experience. Another funny thing I remember this is a story. I remember on Saturday nights, everyone in the neighborhood, a hot summer night, everybody'd sit outside on their front steps. In New York, they call them stoops. And everybody sit outside. And I remember my mother and my neighbor, Angie, from early in the evening kept saying, "I don't know, I smell gas. Do you smell gas?" Finally, they called the gas company. At some point, my brother had gone to bed, because again, he was about 2. I had went to bed at some point. My grandmother went to bed. We're in bed at midnight. We got woken up, and we got to go to my Aunt Mary's. We have to leave. They think the gas leak could be coming from our house. It's either our house or Angie's house. They narrowed it down, so we had to go. And but then I remember this story being told over and over the years. So now here they come, and they're bulldozing the street. And so my father gets on a lounge chair, and he says, well, that's it. Nobody's going to sleep tonight. Right next to the bulldozer. Fell sound asleep for the entire night. Was the only one who slept. And the neighbors told that story for years to come. Hilarious. Yeah, my father was a character in many ways. I have so many stories. God, he used to love telling the stories about the Navy and all the traveling he did. He traveled the world. He was a young kid, had never left Bristol, Pennsylvania, and suddenly at 19, there he was, and he was not in wartime at that time. So he traveled the world, and he always talks about seeing the Can-Can in Paris and the pyramids and crossing the equator and just so many stories. And then he was in the Korean War when he was I think several months from being discharged, and then the Korean War broke out, and he did another year, so he actually did 5 years. But he loved his years in the Navy, loved them, and said they were some of the best years of his life. I used to love listening to the stories. And there's so many great stories. There's we used to, on Tuesday nights, when my mother would have sorority in the summer, he would go to this neighborhood, Kunjets, which was a neighborhood soda fountain, ice cream store. And he would get banana splits for us and milkshakes and things like that. And I remember on Monday night in the winter, it was always tea and toast night, and we had to watch Bonanza and Shenandoah. Oh, don't ask me. But such really great memories. My father loved to travel. My father loved to go out to dinner. He loved to go out. He was really social. He was such a social person. He had a lot of friends, and a lot of his friends were older than him, were, I would say, 15 to 20 years older than him. And I remember him being in his 60s, and a lot of them were dying. And I said, and I remember I'd come home from New York, and somebody had just died. And I said, are you sad, Dad? And he said, it's life. What are you going to do? I find myself repeating those words many times today. I just want to say and wish all of you dads out there a wonderful, happy Father's Day. Life is made up of small comings and goings, and for everything we take with us, there is something that we leave behind. Until the next time.